Hello everybody, it's Christmas Day today. Figured I'd finally do something. Been working a shit ton. Finally bought a new car. As you can see, we're sitting inside of it. And you might be wondering what kind of car that is. Well, I'll tell you. It's a brand new 2004 Honda Odyssey.
No, it's not.
What?
This isn't an Odyssey. It's a Civic.
It is. Okay.
Together we hurt, together we take it. Together we fall, we'll never be breaking. If we were apart, I know that we fell away. Together we are, together we make it. Everything that we both know.
So yeah, I guess it is a Civic. So we've got our key. Let's stick it on this key fucking hole. Dump that clutch in. Starts right up. Let's get going. Let's make sure that doesn't go off. Seat belt, because, well, this shit doesn't shut the fuck up. Alright, so we're in my 2004 Honda Civic Si, or otherwise known as an EP3. So let's just kind of set off and give you my general impression. RPM, change gear, doing well over 60 now in a 30. I mean, no, I'm not fucking doing like 20. And driving around this car, it feels like stable, way more stable than the Prelude, other than the Prelude just having blown suspension. Suspension in this is a little bit starting to give out, because I'm sure it's the stock suspension from when the car first came out. So very loud in here. Feels like the exhaust isn't as loud. It's just there isn't a lot of sound deadening inside of this car, is what it really feels like. You really hear a lot of the road noise. Overall, great handling car. These seats I might be a little too fat for, but they are very supportive. They definitely hold me a lot better than the S2000 seats. They're definitely not as comfortable as the S2000 seats, so that's for sure. Power on this car, I believe this car is making about 160. And, you know, it's definitely more than enough for me. It's fun enough, you know, once you're winding the car out, it's having a blast. But if only we got that Type R engine, that'd be sweet. Car's very reliable. Had no issues with it so far. Have hardly done any work to it. I've just installed some camber arms, some Megan Racing camber arms in the rear. Got a tire. Gonna plan on getting a whole set soon. Installed the stereo, so watch for that coming. And really just kind of enjoying the car as is right now. It's very spacious, feels huge inside. I'm sure a lot of people think that it's big, as a lot of people compare it to the Odyssey, call it a mini minivan. And you know what? I don't think it looks bad. I think it's a great looking car, great handling car, and the power on this thing is pretty good. It accelerates a hell of a lot better than the Prelude, and it's a heavier car than the Prelude. And it's only got about 20 brake horsepower more, so I think this car has set itself pretty great. In terms of practicality, it's pretty amazing. I've used it for work. I do delivery, and I use my personal vehicle. Fold those seats down, opening the hatch, just get shit in and out. Been wanting to get a hatchback for a long time, and I finally got one. Doing a shit ton of work. And so I haven't been able to upload a lot or do any of these kinds of videos. But since I have the day off, might as well. Now, I've actually yet to, I guess, hammer it. I've never actually completely planted my foot to the ground. It's just an unusual feeling to actually have the car rev up that high and it be safe. Normally you feel like the engine's gonna blow, especially in the Prelude. By the time I'm reaching 4,500 RPM, is pretty much when you want to stop for that. That engine's not really. It's seen better days. Let's say that. Once you're in the 5,000, and if you're ballsy enough to go up to 6,000, that shit's spewing like a motherfucker, just burning oil like no other. Now, that engine itself's probably got well over 200,000 miles, so I can't complain too much. B21A1s weren't known for being reliable, let alone, lasting that high in mileage with its original piston rings. So, it's about time to retire that engine. Got to get a new daily, and this Civic has done well. So I'm sure as many people know, this EP3, the shifter location is right in the middle of the dash. Now it is very transit van-like, and it's very unique in its own way, and that's one thing that did draw me more towards this car as well. I like its positioning. Going back to driving the Prelude like I did yesterday for work, it felt weird almost. The comparisons between the throw, because the Prelude's shifter is all stock, the throw is dramatically shorter, it's more tighter, and it's more comfortable in a way. Like the positioning is just kind of feels natural. It's a little further out than what you're used to, obviously, because it's on the dash, but it's more comfortable. So power delivery on this car is very odd. You really got to be in the right gear all the time, or else you're just not really going to get it. So I'll throw it into fifth gear. We're cruising about 45 miles an hour, and if I dump my foot to the floor, nothing. Right now my foot's dumped, nothing. We'll go down a gear, going down a hill here. Go down another gear. And you get the power there. It's really, I guess, keeps you focused. You want to pay attention to how you're doing it if you want to continue to drive comfortably and at a reasonable pace, or if you really want to get the power down. So in terms of wanting to upgrade to this car, I love hatchbacks, love me a Honda, and I needed something from this century, and lately they just haven't been pumping out anything good other than the S2000, which is completely out of my budget. This was the next best alternative, and it was something I was really interested in getting. Finding the car was a fucking nightmare. Every single car out there has a salvage title. It's either just kind of nasty already, or it's got a ridiculous amount of miles. And this car itself, what is a salvage title? Had it inspected, nothing really major. It was in a rear end collision. It was repaired. Chassis is okay. Overall car still work. Engine is great. Only 120,000 miles when I got it, and done about 2,000 miles in it, and I'm digging it so far. The only thing I can complain about is the sound, like I said earlier, and the driving position isn't the best. You feel really high up. You can't see the hood at all, and you can't really see where the front of the car ends. So when I'm trying to make a U-turn, which is already a pain in the butt of its own, because the turning radius on this car is not as great as a Prelude, and I'm sure it's probably about the same as any normal car, but when you're driving around a four-wheel steering car all the time and you get used to such a small U-turn or turning radius in general, it's just kind of a pain now. Just about any single time I want to make a U-turn, I'm doing a three-point turn instead, when I could just simply just go with one finger and I was all set. Though I do want to say, when you're making hard turns, this car really does hold its own a lot better than the Prelude. For being stock suspension as well, the ride is a little harsh. You do feel all the little bumps. When you go over speed bumps, it really hits hard. Feels like, like I've got coilovers, but I've checked already, that it's just stock suspension. So that's kind of a surprise in all of its own, but I guess it helps with the handling. Just to kind of have a bit of a firmer ride. I'm not really complaining too much, just kind of surprised more than discouraged by it. The gasoline's about $2 to the gallon right now, and this car on empty takes about 12 gallons to fill up, so I'm not spending too much money. And I get about 320 miles to the tank, and that's doing a complete city driving. I deliver parts in downtown Phoenix, and I am in traffic all the time. Just ride on the clutch a lot of the time, and that's about the average mileage I've been getting lately. So compared to the Prelude, which it was about 15 gallons to fill up, and I was getting maybe 300 miles to the tank, this is a definite improvement, especially for increasing in power and downsizing the engine just slightly. Now these cars on average run about $5,000, and I got mine for $3,800 with 120,000 miles. So I think I got a pretty good deal there. Yes, it is a salvage title, but the car looks pretty great. I've had no niggles with the engine whatsoever. When I checked out a whole bunch of other cars, I went to these guys' places, and they had the audacity to let me see the car with it completely filled with, I'm talking about years of garbage. Like, the garbage in there was caked with dust. The interior caked with dust. Engines, dried old oil and dust all in the engine bay. Some of the cars were like missing a shit ton of stuff, like the parcel tray, engine cover, parts of the interior were missing, like the door panel pieces were missing. And these guys wanted at least $4,000 for their car, if not even more, with the cars having well over 150,000 miles. And it just kind of shocks me that people think their cars are worth that. Like, it's a second-hand car. How much is it really worth? It's worth as much the person wants to pay for it. And I would not believe anybody would ever pay that price for cars like that. So this was one of the first ones I checked out, and I ended up having to come back to it because I just knew this one was going to be my best option. And unfortunately, when you're shopping for a car like this, you just got to stick with what you can find. Unfortunately, there isn't any great ones out there. There were some cars available at dealerships at a ridiculous price, $10,000 if not more, for a car with maybe 100,000 miles. But, they stopped making these cars in 2005, so you're getting a now, what would have been 10, 11-year-old car for 10 grand. Now, this is a nice car, but it's no race car, it's not as practical as other cars that you can get for that kind of price. So it just kind of really shocks me as to how people think that this car is worth that much. Overall, great car to drive. I love the power delivery. Keeps you kind of focused. You really got to be in the gears. Great daily driver. Great space. Lots of little cubbies around here for use of the driver and the passenger. One of the greatest luxuries that I have now is cup holders, and that is something you cannot take for granted. Because having a car from the 80s, you do not have any cup holders whatsoever. So I've got a cup holder here, 2 cup holders here, another one back here. I've got cups for days. So we got little cubbies here on the passenger side as well. So it's cool that they kind of incorporated that for the passenger, so they can put their little knickknacks or whatever the hell they're carrying, their cell phone, something like that, and you're just kind of not in the way. Lots of storage space. The glove is pretty big. Back seats are spacious. You can fit a regular-sized adult back there comfortably. So that's pretty cool. I've got AC finally, so that's sweet. Another thing you can't take for granted, because that shit sucks living in Arizona. It's a great overall car. I love it, and I'm going to start doing some things to it soon other than the few things that I have done. I noticed that there is not a lot of information out there for these cars, and hopefully some of the stuff that I do will provide a detailed, information, so for future generations who have these cars. So yeah, that's about it. I'll hopefully see you guys sometime soon again with another car review.